Before stone castles, before chimneys, before insulation foam and weatherproof membranes, Viking families survived winters that would shut down modern cities. Arctic winds howled across open ground, snowstorms buried entire landscapes overnight, and temperatures plunged far below what untreated wood should endure. Yet Viking homes did not simply survive these storms, they endured them year after year. One of the most overlooked reasons is not found in weapons, ships, or clothing, but in something deceptively simple: snow itself. What most people see as an enemy of survival, the Vikings turned into a seasonal defensive structure. This was not accidental, and it was not primitive guesswork. It was environmental engineering refined through generations of lived experience. Today, archaeologists continue to find Viking longhouses preserved beneath soil and snow, their foundations intact, their walls protected from the very storms meant to destroy them. The technique behind this survival has modern relevance for anyone interested in cold climate living, emergency shelter, or resilient design. Why Viking homes faced a storm problem that demanded an unconventional solution. Viking longhouses were built low to the ground, with thick turf walls, timber frames, and sod roofs. These materials provided warmth, but were vulnerable to wind penetration and freeze-thaw damage. Strong winter storms could force icy air under walls, strip heat from interiors, and rot wooden lower beams if moisture lingered. Snow accumulation around buildings was inevitable, but instead of fighting it, Viking builders adapted their homes to work with it. Snow was not treated as debris to clear away, but as a temporary architectural layer that could be shaped, reinforced, and controlled. Here's how the snow wall technique actually worked in real Viking settlements. As winter set in and snow began to pile up, families would, quite deliberately, pack snow against the outer walls of their homes. This was not just loose drift snow left to chance, but a purposeful effort to use the elements to their advantage. The snow was then compacted by foot and shovel, forming these dense banks that honestly could rise halfway or even higher along the exterior walls. Packed snow traps air within its structure, turning it into a surprisingly powerful insulator. Once compacted, it blocks wind entirely, preventing those biting cold drafts from reaching the wall surface. Archaeological evidence from Iceland, Greenland and Norway, shows longhouse foundations designed to tolerate this pressure, with outward sloping bases and stone footings that prevented meltwater from seeping inward. Why snow insulation outperformed exposed wood and turf in extreme cold. Dry, compacted snow has an insulating value comparable to, modern insulation materials. By surrounding the lower portion of the house with snow, Vikings created a thermal buffer zone. The interior heat no longer escaped directly into freezing air, but passed slowly through turf, timber and snow. This stabilized indoor temperatures and reduced fuel consumption, which was a critical advantage when firewood was, scarce. Snow walls also absorbed wind energy, reducing structural stress during storms. Instead of wind striking wooden walls directly, it dispersed harmlessly across the curved surface of snowbanks. Now, Let's consider how this method protected Viking homes from rot and structural decay. The snow wall method also solved a moisture problem. You see, wind-driven snow can infiltrate cracks and joints, melt inside walls, and then refreeze, causing long-term damage. A packed snow barrier prevented this infiltration entirely. Meltwater from the outer snowbank flowed away from the structure due to intentional ground grading. This kept wooden sills dry, extending their lifespan dramatically. The result is visible today in preserved longhouse remains, where lower timbers show less decay than expected after centuries underground. What historical evidence tells us about the intentional nature of this technique? This was not a coincidence born of harsh weather. Norse sagas describe winter preparations that included shaping snow around homes. Excavations at sites such as Borg in Lofoten and Stong in Iceland reveal consistent patterns of snow management and ground shaping. These homes were designed with winter snow loads in mind. The Viking understanding of seasonal architecture was precise, practical and repeatable across regions. How modern survivalists and cold climate builders can apply this knowledge today? This technique can still be used in remote cabins, emergency shelters and off-grid structures. A modern application begins with ensuring the structure can tolerate lateral pressure. Once snowfall accumulates, snow should be packed firmly against the windward sides of the building, focusing on lower walls where heat loss is greatest. Ventilation openings must remain clear to prevent moisture buildup. In survival situations, even a temporary shelter can benefit from a compacted snow barrier, dramatically improving warmth without additional materials. Why this ancient method matters in an era of fragile modern infrastructure. Modern homes rely on complex systems that fail during power outages and extreme weather. The Viking snow wall trick reminds us that resilience often comes from understanding natural materials rather than resisting them. Snow, when managed correctly, becomes a renewable seasonal asset rather than a threat. This mindset allowed Viking communities to survive climates that offered little margin for error. What the Viking snow wall teaches us about true environmental intelligence. The brilliance of this method lies in its restraint. There was no attempt to conquer winter, only to work within its rules. Vikings observed how snow behaved, how heat moved, and how materials aged over time. Their homes were not static objects, but seasonal systems that changed with the environment. This is the difference between survival and sustainability. If you value serious historical knowledge, practical survival insight, and techniques proven by centuries rather than trends, subscribe to the channel. Share this episode with others who respect history not as myth, but as instruction. The past still has lessons worth preserving.